welcome to this very cool, very fun little series that we're doing. We're calling it Down with the Creek. I am. I assume if you guys are watching, you are as well. Of course, we're talking about the great TV series Down Dawson's Creek that we are all, in fact, down with. My name is Jerry Strauss, and we have another guest with us this week. She's definitely down with the Creek because she was a part of the Creek in seasons 5, season 6. One of our favorite characters that popped up as Dawson and the crew grew up, and she's here with us this week to talk about it. She's our old buddy. If you've been following anything that I've done over the years, then you have heard her talk about so many of the cool things she's done, and she's good enough to chat with us again. Nicole Bilderback, how you doing, man?
Hi there. I'm doing great. Thank you.
So good to have you. We were talking right off a few moments ago off the air, and I was saying how I didn't even realize or remember, I guess, that you were on this show. So, in recollecting that, like, I got so excited because it was an opportunity for you. And nobody talks about the work they've done more eloquently than you. So it's exciting
Oh,
that you're a part of this body of work, this great show that we've come to love. And
at least somebody thinks I'm eloquent, so that's one person. Yay.
and we're talking about Dawson's Creek, so we know the
Yes.
bar is set very high as far as verbal eloquence goes, but we'll
I'll
do our
probably
best.
disappoint a lot of people.
That's okay. I do it every episode, so that's you people are sticking with us, so we thank you for that. Uh,
Exactly.
Now, the first initial question we ask everybody, it's the obvious one. At this stage of the game in your career, you'd been involved in projects that people have come to love, people have come to know. How did you um, come to be a part of this show in season 5 and season 6?
Oh my gosh. God, it was so long ago. I honestly don't remember. I probably auditioned for it, I'm sure, because this was um, at a time when I believe it was shortly after Bring It On, or not too much after Bring It On, right?
Okay.
And I say that only because uh, my friend Bianca Kylik, who I did Bring It On with, she was also on Dawson's Creek as well. And so when I was doing the show, her and I actually stayed together
Ah,
in Wilmington, North Carolina. So you know what, I read for it. It was always intended to be a recurring role. Um,
hmm.
but at the time when I first read for it, it was a guest star in season 5, I believe, where my
Yes.
character was introduced, Heather Tracy. It was when Dawson was getting ready to head out to Hollywood and go after his, director dreams. And I so they introduced my character in that season, and then they brought me back for a bunch of more episodes in season 6, which I was the final season, I believe.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. I wanted to ask you if there was an inclination to make this a recurring thing because you appeared in season 5, episode 1, and then we don't see you again until a few episodes into season 6. So to me, on the outside, it almost feels like one of those things where we're looking for a one-time deal, but we love this character and we love Nikki so much, we got to figure out a way to bring her back into season 6. But you're saying it was always intended for you to.
Well, and you know what? It's been so long ago. I actually really don't remember.
Mm,
I just remember reading. I know I did audition for it. And
okay.
you know what? Probably what a lot of times with casting, what happens is when you read for what's initially a guest star. A lot of times, what casting says is, this is a guest star, possible recurring, and that
Hmm.
was probably the case. But
Okay.
again, after I'd shot, that one episode in season 5, and then the rest of the season happened, and then not hearing anything to return, you kind of let it go, and you think, oh, maybe maybe they'll bring me back in the future, or maybe not, But hey, I had a blast for that one episode, and sure enough, they totally brought me back for a bunch of episodes in season 6. So
I love it. And, right off the bat, I just want to ask about the timing of this because this was a very unique period of time. For those who didn't live through it, you may not initially understand. It may not initially click with you, but this episode was the season premiere of season 5. It aired on October 10th, 2001. So we are just barely a month after 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I didn't do my due diligence here in the research for sure, but I do see that again. This is a season premiere starting in October. The following season, you kick off your return to the show in episode 5, which is also in mid October, which means that the show premiered that year earlier in
Yes.
September. So I guess retroactively, my question is, was the season, was TV in general that much affected by 9/11? Do you recall like the season premiere being delayed into October? Because it seems unusual that that's where you started off the season.
You know what? It's quite possible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, here's what I do know. I don't know if I mean, I can't answer that as a confirmed yes or no. But I do know this about the networks. So a lot of times, as I'm sure you'll notice, even nowadays, that let's talk about, we're talking about major network primetime television. So you've got all the big networks. And of course, back then, this was called, I believe, it was the WB, right? It was still
Yes.
WB,
Mhm.
which is now CW. And so a lot of times what the networks will do is sometimes they will push, like, one season, a TV series can premiere, let's say, in September, and then the
Yeah.
next season it may not premiere until October. And that's
Sure.
actually just natural. That's just normal. A lot of times it has to do with scheduling, or it has to do with they may have a special lined up, for you know September, and then they'll premiere it the following. So it really just depends on a lot of different factors and elements.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was specifically, pushed a little later due to 9/11, or it merely just could have been, hey, we're seeing some bigger numbers in other shows from other networks that maybe premiered in October instead of September. So maybe they wanted to premiere it in October and see how that did. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. It could be totally one of those reasons, coincidental, etc. I was just, looking at that time frame, like it just got me thinking about, even for you
Yeah.
now, this is one in a line of things that you're doing in your career that's pretty exciting. And at the same time, now you're in this period of time where I have to feel like it's kind of hard for both people behind the scenes and those who are fans of a show like Dawson's Creek to really feel excited about anything for a while. It was just sort of
Sure.
that black cloud hanging over all of us for some time. Do you remember kind of living through that time and
Oh, yes.
in the midst of it, this happening and the show, your debut on Dawson's Creek?
It's crazy because I specifically remember where I was and people that I was with when finding out about the 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 whole like, I just remember, well, actually I remember my dad called me. I was actually at home.
Yeah.
My dad had called me and said, "Hey, Nick, turn on the news." And he gave me the bad, and he just gave me that awful news. I was like, no, and I think my body just went into shock. Like I was just frozen. And then I started watching the news. And then I remember later that day, because we were all just so in this like glazed over, like just pure shock and then devastation. And yes, I'm sure I shed a bunch of tears, like we all did. Like we were all, then everyone was calling each other. We were texting, and so we decided, I actually ended up going out to dinner and even having drinks because I was much younger back then. So I could handle a little bit more alcohol back then. But no, but we wanted to be together. Me and my friends, we wanted to be together, and we wanted to just talk about it in person and just share our thoughts and our feelings about what's happening, and what this really means. And family members that maybe we even knew that worked for airlines that we wanted to make a list of and try to check in with, or friends. Like at the time, my friend was a flight attendant for Southwest, and I didn't know how she maybe would have been affected in any way, shape, or form, or if she
Right.
had friends that were flight attendants on any of the flights. And so there was we just needed to be together, and we needed to support one another and just give that emotional support because it was a massive deal.
Yeah, yeah. For some time. I mean, it was so
Oh,
long before things truly felt normal again, and then, a month later, this is the kind of show that, yeah, on one hand, as we say, it may be kind of weird to get back into the idea of watching a weekly show like a Dawson's Creek, but on the other hand, maybe that's just what a lot of people needed at the time too. So
I think remember TV shows are, and movies too, it's an escape in a lot of ways. And and I think TV shows can also be very healing in that sense, that, to have, sometimes reality can just be so heavy,
yeah,
and that you just need to be like, you know what? I just need this 1 hour tonight to watch my favorite show. Dawson's Creek's coming back on air. And I just need to watch it, and just, if anything, for even if just for 1 hour, escape the intensity of the tragedy that has just happened. That not just, that, hey, so many lives were lost, but also really in relation to our country. Like, what does this mean to our country?
absolutely.
The
Yeah,
direct
it was.
attack on America. So, everybody was affected. So,
Everything felt unfamiliar. So to go to
yeah,
something that felt familiar was probably the ultimate form of comfort.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
even if, and that's what TV offers is, well, this was back in the day before the streaming, before we could like literally binge an entire series, in a couple of days. So you had to wait every week for your favorite show. You'd watch an episode, and then you'd have to wait another whole week before you could see episode 2 or episode 3. And God, what did we do back then? How did we survive?
I'm just thinking to myself, we are starting to sound very, very old here. We need
Look, I
to.
know. I should maybe not have mentioned that. Doggone it.
Well,
But
listen.
yeah,
You're talking about moving away from reality, and that's amazing, and that's great. But I want to ask you about the reality tied into this character that you're playing,
yeah.
because Heather Tracy. Now, we're delving into Hollywood as Dawson is experiencing it for the very first time, and he's heading for his first, I guess, opportunity, you could say, really away from his home camcorder and away from Cape Side. He's got this internship. He's showing up first day at the studio, and one of the first people he encounters is you, I guess you would say a high level executive producer. Would that be an appropriate
I believe
description?
I was a studio. I mean, yes, producer, yes, but I think I was a studio executive. So I think I was like, maybe, was I like VP of development or something like that? I'd have to go
Okay.
back and like actually probably rewatch a few episodes. But I was a studio executive who was interviewing, who I thought was somebody else, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Well, this is the amazing thing. This is,
Yeah.
I believe you were just in this one really memorable scene in this first episode, and
It was funny. I
but
actually recently saw it.
it was not only funny, but it was such a great, a well-written way to establish a character. Like, after that scene, we knew so much about
Oh,
who
yeah.
you were and what you were all about, as Dawson just randomly runs into you. And yeah, like you say, he's there to try to figure out who to report to for his internship, and you immediately see him and assume that he's a writer who's
Yeah,
there with a much higher purpose in mind.
right. And then I started even suggesting the creative ideas that we had, that the director who I'm working with, I don't remember his name, Todd or something
Yes.
like that. And how I'm assuming he's the writer, and like I start throwing ideas. I'm like, we have this idea to make the feature film version of, what was it, Seventh Heaven, I think.
Seventh Heaven.
And
Yes.
it's so funny because a friend of mine recently sent me that scene, the very first introduction scene,
Mm,
which I had not seen in many, 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 many years. And
right.
so I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm, and going, oh my gosh. But then I was laughing out loud, going, I forgot about this. And I'm like, this was really kind of funny. But you're so right. You nailed it on the head. It's like, you knew right away who Heather Tracy is, what she's like, what she's about, and how, if we see her again, what exactly we're getting into.
Yes, and a few things I want to mention here. First of all, the fact that the big idea here is a movie version of Seventh Heaven that you describe as more serious kind of like the Brady Bunch movie, which is not serious at all. So there's all sorts of creative misfiring going on here. And I believe Dawson even says something in the middle, like I think you say something like, what do you think about that idea? And he says something to the effect of like, I don't know if he outright says it's awful, but he says something like negative, like this is insanity, the fact that you're suggesting this, but this
Yeah.
is the big studio project that you're looking to push for this writer who is not Dawson. You're expecting somebody else to show up. So in this world, we assume this movie eventually gets made.
Right. Right. And I wish we would have seen it in some capacity on the show, because that would actually be really funny.
And this is this whole storyline. There's so much meta in it, as it's we're talking about show business on a TV show, and there's so many different ways I think you can speak to that, because you're actually dealing with this industry while you're portraying someone who's in a different role in this industry. Um, but it's it's um it's the real character building moment for me, I believe, is the second you finally realize that this is not who you think you're talking to. Dawson
Right.
is not the writer. You immediately stop talking to him, and
Yeah.
you instead talk to your assistant and say, who is this?
Yeah.
And it's going to be a while, even through your future appearances, before you talk to Dawson directly again. It's always, your little friend or your little helper. It's all like a very derogatory, like you speaking to the director who is working for you. That's Todd
Right.
Carr, who we meet in this episode as well. But it's like this character definitely has standards as far as who she's willing to look in the eyes and speak directly to, as opposed to who is not worthy of that attention.
Oh, sure. Like, and even after she realizes that, okay, this is not the person she thinks she's talking to, I think she just gives him a look. I think she just gets like, she doesn't even say anything. You're right. She doesn't say anything. But I think there's like some look like, why am I
Yes,
talking to you? Why have I been
ex-
talking to you this whole time?
the whole game
And
changes.
yep. And it's so funny because I had forgotten, you're so right. I'd forgotten that later on when we see her, she doesn't really ever directly talk to him until much later. She just kind of refers to him as like this thing that's there, which is horrible, but funny, because it's the character. And I also think Heather, as yes, she was a bigwig, she was in a power position, but at the same time, she was also young. Like there, in real Hollywood land, there aren't executives that are that young running the show and making those kinds of decisions. They have to have a little bit more, experience under their belt. So maybe to some degree, I think maybe Heather was also blowing up and making her position, or at least coming across like she was, wearing bigger shoes than maybe she actually was,
Yeah,
possibly.
I wanted to ask you about that because, and we don't have to get into specifics, of course, but I mean, I'm guessing that in our world, reality, so to speak, yourself and James Vanderbeek are in a very vague, broad, similar age category.
Mhm.
If I'm correct in saying that,
You're
but
right. It's broad and it's vague because I can still play younger and still play. You know what I mean? It
But
is.
but in the show, I mean, your character has to be somewhat older than him, because you have been in Hollywood and climbed your
Yeah.
way up to this position where you have the power to be mean to people. So you got to be somewhat older. I was just curious what your character's age in your mind was compared to Dawson, who is like fresh out of high school here.
I think my character, because I mean, if you look back, I mean, first of all, there was an episode, and I do remember this, and maybe you were planning on bringing it up, I don't know, but there was an episode at some point where Heather Tracy establishes that she has had some work done, shall we say.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
And so I'm thinking she's definitely out of college. And who knows how she arose to the top and to be in a power position so quickly. But or maybe maybe she has family in the industry, or maybe God knows who she dated to get in that. But I don't know. But yeah, but I mean, he and I are around the same age in real life. And if when you watch, there isn't really like a vast age difference, but there definitely has to be some established, hey, Heather Tracy has been through college already, and she's already got this amazing job position. So I think Heather was probably at the very least the youngest in her mid 20s.
Okay. Now, you've worked with so many people before this, after this. Did you have any experience working with James Vanderbeek before this, or because that was
No, I don't think so. No, I had not. And so when I got to work with him and meet him, he's lovely. He's absolutely lovely. Just a super nice guy, really down to earth. And in fact, because there's since the show shot in North Carolina and Wilmington, that you have to actually fly in to, I believe it's Raleigh. I think you have to fly into a different airport first, and then take a smaller plane to fly into Wilmington. At least at the time, you did.
okay.
And so there were no direct flights from LA to Wilmington. So I remember anytime there were actors that were either guest starring on the show or recurring, there was always we were always on the same flight. So I'd actually flown with James quite a few times on the same flights.
Yeah. Cool. Now, Heather Tracy, we got to ask. If we're going to go meta, we're going to go all the way here.
Uh-oh.
As a character, in your experience, navigating success in this industry, have you met Heather Tracy's in your past, or aspects of what she was like that kind of strike a realistic chord with you, as far as those who you've dealt with and worked with along the way?
Yes, probably. I wouldn't say not necessarily exact matches, but I have met people very much like Heather Tracy, more so male.
Okay.
And this was actually, again, this is in the past, but throughout the years, yeah, and not necessarily, producers or I would say even agents that maybe I've interviewed with in the past that were big wig agents, but and again, some of them may have been little trying to wear bigger shoes before they could actually fill them.
Right.
But yes, there were definitely incidences that I encountered were that were very similar to Heather Tracy, and it's so funny because even though when I was younger, as much as I would maybe encounter that, I would also be so entertained on the inside that I never allowed it to affect me or to to create this, awful look of Hollywood, even though I was very much realized that that's, there very much are people like that out there. It's just, I always just took it kind of with a grain of salt, and I would laugh on the inside and be like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell my friends about this meeting. You know what I mean?
That's a super
Yeah,
that's a
and
super
it was, you
helpful
gotta find the
attitude,
humor.
right?
You got to find the humor in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's probably, for those people who pursue any sort of career as a performer, the ability to laugh things off like that, whether
Sure.
it's right, whether it's wrong, it's got to be helpful as far as just to continue to move on.
Everything is helpful, as much as this industry can be so toxic, as we know, it also, everything, no matter what, all the experiences, even all the negative encounters that you may experience, everything really is a learning experience, truly. And it's what you choose to do with it and how you choose to perceive it is really what matters, and what you take with you.
Gotcha. Now, what we took with us from this episode, beyond, a very distinct memory of yourself and your origin story, so to speak, for Dawson's Creek, we also met the director, whom I guess is working directly under your auspices, so to speak, under your umbrella. You have direct authority over him. His name is Todd Carr in the film, or in the TV show. And for those who have not yet seen these episodes that we're talking about, I would kind of describe him as like a Russell Brand type character before Russell Brand was a thing. Like, if Russell Brand were a thing back then maybe that's who they call first for this character,
That's
because
so funny. Oh my gosh. And that
and
was
he,
that was played by Hal Ozon, right?
yes, yep.
Such a sweetheart of a guy, such a great guy,
And
and really funny in this role.
very funny, and a great, because he, in his own way, especially when we first meet him in this episode, is a big jerk. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
typically the nicest people who play the best jerks. And Nikki, you're proof of that.
I've played plenty of bitch roles, but they're also, I think they're our favorite roles because they're just so much fun to play, you know?
Oh, sure, because you get to do that. You can't do that in real life without repercussions, but
No, exactly. So now I get to play the bitch and a bad guy and get paid for it. How therapeutic. Who needs therapy when you got that?
and yeah, I mean, same thing here. This is sort of a one and done for Dawson at this stage of the game
Yeah.
because he shows up, he connects with Todd Carr, who is pretty much mean to him or dismissive of him from the get go. And throughout the course of the episode, the tension mounts pretty quickly to the point where at the end of the episode, Dawson stands up for himself, which is very un-Dawson like. If we
Yeah.
follow this character up until then, he stands up and he kind of decries the attitude of Mr. Carr and says that he's kind of a um I don't know, a detriment to directing, like someone who
Yeah.
doesn't appreciate
Yeah.
the role and the opportunity he's been given. All this stuff that's insane when you think about the fact that it's his first day on the job in an internship straight out of college. And as expected, he gets fired pretty much immediately. And we think that's the end of his time with Todd, with you. The whole world has gone away, and we don't see it come back again for him for quite some time.
Which was, I don't, that's, you do bring up a good point because you have to kind of wonder, like, what were the producers like? What were they always? I really don't know. I don't remember if they were always planning to bring that world for him back around. You know, for him to be like to encounter these horrible people, Heather and Todd, for them to come back into his life. You know, after a whole season.
Yeah. I don't know. And, we haven't, we're not covering all the episodes that get him back with Todd because
Right.
they do
Right.
eventually reconnect and begin
Yes.
to work together. But you don't come back into the picture again until now we're in season 6, episode 5. It's an episode called The Imposters. And the filming of a movie is underway with Dawson essentially being an assistant to Todd. But as we see time and time again, kind of the calming influence in some ways, the idea man behind Todd, who's
Right.
busy, drinking and carousing and freaking out at things. And Dawson is there to save the day time and time
Yeah.
again. Especially when you show up. This this is sort of the big issue in season 5 for them, where you show up and kind of call them on the fact that they're under budget or over budget, I should say, and over in schedule too. They're 3 days beyond where they should be, 3 days behind, I should say, and you're not very happy. So this is kind of your royal triumphant. If you were kind of simmering in your debut, now you're downright pissed.
Of course, right?
We get to crank it up in season 6.
Because if you're going to bring Heather Tracy back, you gotta be reintroduced with a bang. Like it's like she's funny. We got an idea of who she was. Obviously, she cares about status and position, and then here we are. Okay, so Dawson has survived and is now the actual assistant to or interning with Todd, and so now Heather is involved in this, and Heather's pissed. If you thought she was funny before, well, now you're gonna see.
Well, here's the other wrinkle that we find out in conversation here,
Yeah.
and this is the one thing we did not know about Heather before, which is the fact that she and Todd apparently had a what sounds like a very brief, very unmutual fling at some point, that he kind of blew her off after the fact for somebody else pretty directly. Again, this is very much a
Sure.
Russell Brand. Like Russell Brand would be the guy for this character. But she clearly harbors some sort of grudge on a personal level against Todd, in addition to all of the professional concerns.
Poor Dawson. Look what he walked into. Like, really? His first like big internship. And he gets these 2 crazy whack jobs. Like, poor guy.
Unbelievable. And yeah, this is one of those instances where you're looking to get rid of the lead, the female lead. You're not happy with the performance. The writing on the wall is that if that happens and the movie shut down, despite what anyone says, there's a good chance the movie may not ever be made. So it could be the end of the movie, it could be the end of the opportunity and everybody's jobs, essentially.
Yeah.
So Dawson is trying to be the only sane person in the room, so to speak, and figure out a way to keep things rolling, to convince you that she, the actress who is playing the lead role, is capable of pulling it off.
Yes.
And in the end, he figures out a way to do it. And I think this is the first time that you are anything but absolutely like hateful of this young man, Dawson Leary, if for
Keeping
but
it
a second.
right, keeping it PC, even it was just for a second. But yeah, that's so funny. And I think that the actress who played the actress, the lead in the, I think that was played by Bianca Kylet, correct? My friend.
I don't have it right here. I
Here's
apologize, but
I have to go back and look at her character's name, but I'm pretty sure.
yeah, she was involved with many episodes. She had sort of a relationship with Dawson, as well as with Todd before that, and yeah, she
Not
was.
everyone has a relationship with Todd.
Well, look, we're also talking about a show where, in the end, everyone has had a
Has
relationship with
literally
Dawson
has
too.
had a relationship. That's true. That is true. You're right.
So yeah, so this is definitely the beginning of a longer storyline as we go through season 6 that you are going to continue to pop up in as this movie moves along. Season 6, episode 11, Day Out of Days. Uh, Principal photography has been completed, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a synopsis from the episode, but this is where we have the meeting with the studio rep, who is played by Paul Gleason, I believe, who a lot of people will best remember still after all these years as the principal. He's a principal, right? In Breakfast Club? Was he the.
Was he the principal or was he the? Yeah, I think, or he wasn't a teacher, was he? Was he the principal? I
I'm
always thought he was a principal. He may have.
I think so. I'm blanking all of a sudden. It's so
I,
cliche
I
that I.
saw it last summer actually, and I think he was either the principal or he was a teacher that was that volunteered for the summer school or detention, summer school, whatever, you know. But yes, but please continue. He's an icon to us, to us
Yes.
old people. He's an icon.
And he's the guy, at least one guy in the room in this meeting as we're reviewing what we've done in finishing the principal photography here. He's somebody who is clearly above yourself as far as authority. So now it's all on him, and he is very negative about what has been produced so far, about the story, about um, the, I guess, what he considers to be sort of a lame, predictable direction that the movie has taken. But the undercurrent is, and we see this as he appears in future episodes, he really just wants more sex and nudity and violence, and he just wants to
Yeah,
dirty up his movies, essentially, whether it's for personal reasons or because he thinks that's where the money is. That's kind of the new thing that Dawson now is left to struggle with as he wrestles with his own artistic integrity.
because Dawson hasn't been through enough, right? So let's just throw more at him.
Well, Dawson, I mean, and this goes back all the way to, Dawson making his own movie back at home, and even
Right.
the very early beginnings of the show where he talks about how, his hero Steven Spielberg never had to use nudity, never had to, make dirty movies. Essentially,
Yeah.
he relied on story, and that's the kind of movies that Dawson always wanted to make, not the stuff that relies on
Right.
sex and violence, etc. So this is something that's going to be a recurring issue, and then you're there kind of now looking to, I guess, really drive that home. I mean, you're part of the army, so to speak, the Paul Gleason army, and you need to kind of enforce the content going in this direction, which we're going to skip through the episodes, but this inevitably leads uh, to Dawson being in a position to do some reshoots of this movie on his own, and this is really a point where, whether it's by circumstance or because somehow you trust him a little bit more, you're now a little bit more, maybe a little bit more on Dawson's side because, like it or not, he's in this position to save the day.
It's so funny because hearing that, I'm like, that would never happen. It would never happen in the real world. I'm sitting there going, wow, that would never, ever, ever happen. But
Take over, kid.
right here's our millions of dollars we have for a reshoot. Let's just give it to some intern. But of course, being TV land and being and being Dawson. But yeah, we get to see another side that maybe Heather secretly does have some level of belief in him and what he could potentially do.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
always saving the day. The good guy, the hero, got to save the day somehow, right?
Well, also, I mean, talk about saving money. I mean, Dawson's, is he even getting paid at this point? Is he still an intern? Like, it's certainly a budget friendly decision to put this guy in such a.
Probably not. And that's probably why they actually put him in charge.
Now,
to do the reshoots.
that sort of cost cutting seems like something that very much could happen in any industry, in any walk of life.
Right.
So, I mean, just looking back at it as a whole, I mean, this is really, um, it's a way to establish Dawson moving from his dreams to reality and then struggling with the reality of that reality. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that a character like Heather Tracy is really, I mean, it's not necessarily about this character's evolution, but it's about being part of Dawson's journey and being that obstacle, that kind of ever changing obstacle, but it's the perfect kind of foil for Dawson and the perfect sort of hurdle that he would encounter when he goes to the real world, especially a guy like Dawson who's such a, head in the clouds dreamer.
Yeah, and I think too, I think Heather Tracy's representative of, I think you nailed it right on the head, but I think she's representative of not only the harshness of his dream, we'll call it his dreamland, the reality of it. I think, but also, it was a part of his journey to actually, hey, evolve and grow up a little and get your head out of the clouds and be like, no matter what you encounter, no matter what kind of challenges you encounter, or whether it's professionally or even asking yourself ethical questions like, is this aligned with my integrity? How do I work around this but still hold true to my integrity? I think that Heather needed to happen in his life for him to actually evolve and become a little tougher and stronger and wiser and to face the realities of the business and industry. So that it's really more it's preparation.
Yeah.
In a way, she was preparing him.
And I mean, look, you would be very well equipped to answer this, but for somebody like yourself who has kind of been through so many experiences and come out so well on the other side, I know that you said that Heather Tracy is more reminiscent of other types of people in different positions that you've come across along the way. But when you look back at your career story so far, do you think it's important that you had experiences with those people in order to kind of toughen you up and get you in the right mindset to be able to navigate everything that you've come across?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Without those experiences, I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have ended up still, level-headed and together. I'm just saying that having those experiences teaches you so much and contributes to an overall, an overall lesson of not just business, but logistics, but also too, it's very personal and like it helps you grow up, it helps you evolve, it helps you become stronger and wiser and to make better, wiser, smarter choices along the way and realize, you know what, that happened and I'm glad that happened. It didn't work in my favor. But ultimately later down the line, you realize, oh my God, that actually saved me from a train wreck, So it's, and then it just, I think it teaches you, you have to have you've got to have some kind of, bulletproof vest on per se, and learn how to, align it with your integrity. So in other words, without trying to feel like you have to sacrifice, your morale just become successful in this business, you know?
Mm-hmm. Where do you think Heather Tracy would be today?
I think, oh God, that's a funny question. You know what? I think Heather Tracy
She's
I think she would be very successful. I would like to think Heather has gone through some lessons of her own
mm-hmm.
and has evolved a little bit more and has grown and has softened up and has had a lot of self awareness and maybe realized that, hey, she was kind of a bitch back in the day. And now she's producing successful independent films that are sweeping Sundance and that actually have meaning and message. That's, I think that's Heather's become a good person. Okay.
There you go. And she's in the middle of all that. When she has time, she's probably calling up people that she's wronged over the years, like Dawson, and making amends. I'm sure that's what.
Exactly. And she's volunteering, doing charity work and she feeds the homeless. Come on.
You have so much faith in this woman.
I have to, doggone it. That
Well,
would be kind of funny if they ever did like a random, even if it was just for like one season or like a limited series of um of going back to Dawson's Creek, where they are now, with
yeah.
characters. Is Dawson a big director? Has he kept with it? Has he, all like, where are they now? And it would be really funny, I think, to even bring back some of the recurring casts that had pivotal, roles in some way, shape, or form to their journey. And I guess that would be a fun way to find out where Heather Tracy ended up.
I mean, I have to believe that there's going to be a point where there's going to be a groundswell of support for some sort of a revival of the show, because I feel like it's once again being discovered by a new generation, and it's gaining sort of that nostalgic buzz. And this is a show that's based on the fact that people love the characters.
Yeah,
So, of course, this is the kind of show where those fans are going to want more of those characters in 2022, catch up with them. Um, that would be so much fun. They kind
I
of
think
did
it'd be a
that
big.
in the series finale. They flash forwarded a certain number of years, but yeah, to catch up with them now and see how their lives evolved with kids and who knows what else.
I mean, look,
Yeah,
a TV series has not only a cult following, but an actual massive international following. When you can't walk into a Starbucks and come across somebody with a dog named Pacey, I mean, come on, like it's happened to me multiple times, and I'm not kidding. You got Pacey, Dawson. It's so crazy how people are. There is a large audience for this. That are just, I mean, look, if Buffy the Vampire Slayer can be a college course now, it's like, which it is, by the way, apparently, it's like an elective or something.
wow.
Um, and then you know what? Anything's possible. So and Dawson, I think, has that similar nostalgia, like, that has that diehard dedicated following and crowd, but also too now with Gen Z and millennials having caught up and they're being introduced to Dawson's Creek. So now we have a whole new generation of followers.
You know what? I have an idea. We're gonna do the film version of Dawson's Creek, but it's gonna be a little more serious, like the Brady Bunch movie.
Like the Brady Bunch movie
Yeah.
with and we're gonna hire a few of the Seventh Heaven actors. I'm hoping Jessica Biel is available.
I'm sure she's waiting for this phone call as we
I'm
speak.
sure she is. Which, by the way, she is one of my boss ladies. So I'm like, yo,
Oh.
Jess, since we've worked together, I have an idea for you.
Hey, and listen, not to pester, not to nag, but I'd like you to tell everyone who's watching, everyone who's listening, um, how they can follow you and anything exciting down the pike you might want to talk about, anything you may or may not be able to say or promote, or like what's new in the world of Nikki Bilderback.
Yay. Well, you can follow me on Instagram at the Nicole Bilderback official. No, the Nicole Bilderback, right? Look at me. I've had to change it a couple of times. It is actually the Nicole Bilderback. And then Facebook is Nikki Bilderback. I'm no longer on Twitter, but I do have a great Christmas movie that is premiering this holiday season called oh God, what's it called? Cloudy with a Chance of Christmas.
Yes.
And the reason why I had to think about it is because that title has changed. Titles change. This is the business thing. Names change.
I
But
hope
that's
that
coming
one
out.
doesn't. That's amazing.
I know, right? Yeah, Cloudy with a Chance of Christmas. That is coming out this Christmas. And I currently have a TV series that was the #1 show of last year that is still streaming on Hulu called Cruel Summer.
Mm-hmm. And the more and more it just seems to come up in conversation. I think people are still watching and discovering that show for the first time. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. So, um, good
That's
stuff.
the beauty, I think, of these streaming platforms. It's like, even though I mean, the show is still, it's only a year old. It was just last year. But that's the cool thing about streaming platforms, is that it's on there. So even if you didn't get to watch it last year, you can watch it now. Like, how did we survive back then? I'm telling you, we had to wait every week. And then when it went on hiatus, we couldn't see it at all for like 3-4 months. Remember, during the summers, we had to wait for all our favorite shows to come back.
Yeah, we had to go play outside.
What? All the kids right now, all the Gen Zers are like, what? They had to wait a week for every episode? Why?
Exactly. They don't know how good they have it. But
I know, right?
yes, but and listen, that's the great thing about this show, is that whether you guys are listening or watching and you're already a big fan, you've watched this show countless times, speaking of Dawson's Creek, or maybe you're just considering diving in, it's available for you. It's easy to find. It's currently on Hulu here in the United States. And you can catch up and you can see Nikki be I'm not even going to be derogatory, kind of ill-tempered. How about that?
Cranky. Just a little cranky.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. So much fun, and always so much fun to talk to you, Nikki. Great to go back to the creek, so to speak, with you and catch up about the fun that you had on Dawson's Creek. So thanks for joining us again.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's always, hey, it's always fun to be up the creek. Get it? I'm working on my comedy. Cut me some slack.
We needed some marketing content. Thank you. I'm going to put that on the list.
Up the creek. Yep. It talks about how she got up the creek.